Good day, subscribers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Jeremy. This is the Financial Education Channel, and today we're doing Stock Market Weekly Recap number 29 ever in history, guys. Recapping the September 2nd, 2017 week. We're going to look at how the markets did this week. We're going to look at some stocks that went up and down the most, which we had some extremely big movers this week. We're going to look at some of the biggest news stories from this past week, as well as what are we looking at for the next week, guys. Let's go ahead and get into this. So, the Dow Jones this week was up 0.8%. On the year, the Dow Jones is up over 11% right now. The NASDAQ, look at the year the NASDAQ's having. The week alone, look at the NASDAQ this week, up almost 3%, up 2.71%. Year to date, the NASDAQ's up almost 20%, guys. What a year for the NASDAQ this is so far. The S&P 500 was up 1.37%. That one's up a little over 10% year to date. So once again, we see the NASDAQ is just destroying the S&P, destroying the Dow, up almost 20% year to date, guys. What a year. Let's look at some of these big movers this week. So Movado, the watch company, their stock went up over 15% this week. Strong week for Movado. At Home Group, their stock went up over 15%. Look at this one year to date, up 73%. I should look into this company. They're opening up stores here in Las Vegas recently. Palo Alto Networks, they reported numbers this week, and their stock went up over 14%. Then we had United Rentals. They rent a lot of industrial equipment and things like that. Their stock went up over 12% this week. We had CryoLife, which I think is one of those companies that like freezes your body after it's dead or something like that. I might have to look into this. I think that's what it is. I'm not 100% sure. This stock was up over 12% this week. Then on the downside, Barnes & Noble's education was down 21%. Barnes & Noble's still trying to make it some kind of way, and not a good week for them. Hewlett-Packard, another stock, a blast from the past stock, I call it. This one was down 20% this week. Then we had Best Buy, another blast from the past stock. This one was down almost 12% this week. We had Campbell's Soup, another blast from the past stock, down over 11% this week. And then H&R Block was down almost 10% this week, guys. So those were some of the big movers up and down. Some of those downside movers, some of those companies were like so in like 15 years ago, and now they're so out. I mean, HP, thinking about, you know, Barnes & Noble's, Best Buy, some of those companies, man. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, those were the companies. Now it's like they're just struggling stocks. So the biggest news story that caught my attention this week was Apple has set its annual iPhone event for September 12th. My eyes are definitely going to be on this event, which is not coming up this week, the following week. It was just kind of big this week that they announced the date that's going to be. Why does Apple even matter? I don't own specifically Apple stock, but why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to you guys out there? Well, Apple is such a big barometer for the entire market. You got to understand that Apple is so much weight on Apple as far as if Apple stock drops a lot, the whole stock market drops a lot. If Apple goes up a lot, the whole market's lifted. If you look, Apple's had a phenomenal year. And what's the NASDAQ had? A phenomenal year. If Apple was to suddenly have a really bad year as far as a stock performer, you know, go down 20-30%, the NASDAQ and pretty much the markets as a whole, the Dow as well, would have a very weak year, and probably even the S&P, guys. But when you have Apple having a strong time, that helps the whole market out. And not just that. There's so many companies that are related to Apple. Like you look at one that I own, Cirrus Logic. That's one of the most heavily reliant Apple plays out there, right? But there's if you own Skyworks Solutions, if you own Qualcomm, if you own any of these massive chip makers, they're all pretty much doing business with Apple. Any of the memory chip makers, so there's a good chance you own that out there. And if you have a 401k or anything, good chance the majority of the money in that 401k, as far as their biggest holding, is probably Apple. So every single person that watches this channel should always be paying attention to what's going on with Apple, because it's absolutely it's the most important company in the world to everyone at the end of the day, guys. So that's why I'm paying attention to it. Also because my Cirrus Logic position, they're so heavily reliant on Apple that it's always important for me to pay attention to Apple at the end of the day, guys. Then I'm looking, and I just saw a ton of stocks are at 52-week highs, or they hit their 52-week highs this week, or they're super close to 52-week highs. These are just stocks that are on my watch list that I keep track of every day or actually own positions in, right? Wynn Resorts hit its 52-week high this week. We had Nvidia came very close to hitting its 52-week high this week. We had Shopify hit its 52-week high this week. We had Micron hit its 52-week high this week. We had Facebook almost hit its 52-week high this week. We had Apple hit its 52-week high this week. Remember I said the markets are doing great, and look at Apple just hit its 52-week high. Alibaba almost hit its 52-week high this week. We had Activision Blizzard hit its 52-week high this week. Caterpillar hit its 52-week high this week. So that's just my main watch list, guys. Just my main watch list. And some of the stocks I actually own, and some of them I actually don't. That's just my watch list. And look at how many stocks were on there as far as 52-week highs. So if those ones are on my watch list, they're hitting 52-week highs. And I know there's a ton more stocks out there that I don't track on a daily basis that are hitting 52-week highs or something very close, guys. It's just something interesting I'm paying attention to. You know, when I talk about the stock market slightly overvalued right now, I never say we're in bubble territory, but we're certainly slightly overvalued. Doesn't mean those ones. Sometimes, you know, stocks at 52-week highs doesn't mean they're overvalued. It could mean they're still undervalued. It's just they're growing super fast. But it's definitely something to pay attention to when you're getting all these stocks at 52-week highs at the end of the day, guys. Next story I was paying attention to was Ambarella. They reported numbers this week. They're a big play on drones. They were a big play on GoPro, but they've lost GoPro, and it frustrates me the way a lot of these articles wrote about GoPro. They say GoPro uncertainty. It makes it almost sound like GoPro's business is bad when GoPro's business is outstanding right now. But shares of Ambarella, a video chip maker that serves camera maker GoPro, as well as other markets, saw its shares reverse dramatically overnight, falling 22% after the company slashed its outlook for the year, citing shifting patterns in the drone market and also lower revenue from GoPro because GoPro's shifting to Qualcomm chips. But the bigger thing that stuck out to me, I mean, the GoPro news came out about 2 quarters ago, and that was huge news that GoPro is probably going to go with Qualcomm for their next set of cameras over Ambarella. That's huge news. But what was even bigger news is that the drone market has basically slowed to, like no growth. Drone market's been growing at ridiculous rates, guys. And now it's gone to like a 0% type, number where Ambarella is actually expecting drone-related numbers to actually be down, which is mind-blowing to me. But it's not so mind-blowing, and I talked with a friend about this. I said DJI is screwing up, a great thing they have going. They've got, by far the most market share in drones, but they're going to kill off their own products because they launch so many different products right now. And when you're in tech, you cannot launch so many products. So let's look at this, guys. Look at how many drones this company has in the market right now. They got a Mavic Pro Platinum, a Phantom 3 SE, the Spark drone, the Phantom 4 Advanced, Phantom 4 Pro, Mavic, Phantom 4, Phantom 3 Professional. How are you supposed to know what drone you're supposed to get? So sometimes most companies fail because they do not innovate fast enough in the tech game, right? And they get passed by. In DJI's case, they've innovated too much and they've confused consumers. Whenever you have too many products out there, it confuses consumers and they just don't end up buying anything. Even me, I'm a drone enthusiast almost, and I don't even know half the difference between all these different drones. It's like, well, this one can do this, but then this one's $200 more, and I guess it has this extra feature, and then this one's like $200 cheaper, and it's like so confusing. You got 8 different drones in the market. It's way too much, guys. So I think the part of the reason why the drone market has just slowed so fast is actually because of DJI. There's a reason Apple only launches 2 new iPhones every year, right? They launch one that's one size and one that's a bigger size, and that's it. And then if you want to buy any other iPhone than that, then you've got to buy last year's. So they have this year's phones and they have last year. And phones is the biggest category in the world. There's nothing outselling phones. So DJI just made a bad business move, in my opinion. They've launched too many products. That's going to end up hurting Ambarella, and it's going to hurt the whole entire drone market because DJI is the drone market at the end of the day. Everybody else is, distant second and third. GoPro's the second player there, and they're way behind DJI, right? So they've innovated too much, and they've screwed up their own great thing. You know, they dipped like Winnie the Pooh, they dipped their head in the honey pot one too many times, guys. As far as this upcoming week, we don't have a ton coming up this week, guys. Labor Day is coming up here on Monday, so the markets will be closed on Monday. Dave & Buster's is reporting numbers, so I know a few of you guys that watch the channel actually own Dave & Buster's stock. They are reporting numbers. And then as far as next week, I'm just going to be paying attention to kind of Wynn Resorts and just the gaming sector stock moves, but specifically Wynn Resorts because that's a stock I actually own, so that's the one I care about more than anything. Numbers came out on Friday that gross gaming revenue was up over 20%, guys, and that was with a typhoon that happened. A typhoon happened the last week of August, right? And they still had numbers go up 20%. Like, that is mind-blowing to me that a typhoon could happen and your numbers still go up 20% for the month, guys. Absolutely amazing. So I'm just kind of paying attention to Wynn stock. Does it continue to rise? You know, does it get to a 150, 160 level and then start thinking about maybe taking profits and getting out of that one or shifting? So I'm just going to be, you know, usually I don't pay super close attention to short-term stock price moves. I will be paying attention to Wynn Resorts this week, just seeing if that one continues to move higher and higher and gets 150, 160 range, and maybe I start getting out of it. So we'll just have to see what happens, guys. I hope you enjoyed this today. Come back every Saturday. I always post these stock market weekly recaps. Well, usually, unless there's a week where there's like no news at all, I won't post on that, guys. If you just came across this channel, you may want to subscribe. We talk personal finance on the channel. We talk entrepreneurship. I'm an actual business owner. I give away so many business tips. We talk stock market investing more than anything. Check out my book. It's linked in that description. It goes all into my stock market investing strategy. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a great day.